The Chargers had the Texans on the ropes, but Justin Herbert's heroics were not enough to overcome the team's critical mistakes.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day as part of the #1 sports podcast network. David, man, that was a tough one to watch.
It really was, and despite all of the issues that the Chargers had, all the uncharacteristic mistakes, they still had a chance to win this football game.
They absolutely did, and that's the frustrating thing, especially because part of that got taken away from them at the end. But that's what we're going to get into, is just the critical mistakes that cost the Chargers this game. Because let's be honest, if the team outside of Justin Herbert plays a B- game in this one, they probably win handily, right? But the rest of the team totally fell short of what they need to do, because Justin Herbert, man, put on the Superman cape, and it fit well, because that man absolutely did everything he could to keep them in this one. But when you have to rely on rookies, sometimes you're going to have to live with the rookie mistakes, and that's what happened for Oronde Gadsden II. And I think for the defense, right, obviously just 2 brutal drives to start the game, but then settled in nicely and truly dominated the Texans for basically 3/4 of this game. So we have a lot to get into today, but I think the biggest thing that stands out was just like everything you couldn't have go wrong for you in this game went wrong for you. Like, the Chargers game script is pretty simple. Like, they have to stay even or get out ahead of their opponents, because their offense isn't meant to come from behind, and their defense and pass rush plays so much better when they have a lead and they can really get after you, and you don't have that run as a threat. And I think when you just look at how this game started, David, you get down in a 14-0 hole. You're playing terribly offensively. You're playing terribly defensively. Even though there was many things that happened later on in the game that cost them, like, it really was those early mistakes and that hole they dug for themselves that ended up costing them in the end.
Yeah, it certainly was. The beginning of the football game started in a way that was very uncharacteristic of this Chargers defense. Like, they just don't do that. Like, they don't allow those type of explosive pass plays to occur. Not to mention back-to-back. Like, it's just, that's something we have not seen all season. This football team, especially on the defensive side, has done a spectacular job of limiting the explosives. And even if they do have them, they don't come back to bite them. But in these situations, they were long bombs that really put the Chargers behind the 8 ball really, really quickly. And it really gave you the feeling like this game could get out of hand really quickly and turn into a blowout.
It did feel like it was getting dangerously close to that Jaguars game, where it started, very similarly. And then the Chargers, to their credit, found a way to kind of settle in to this game. But I think, as you've seen for this team, against teams like the Dolphins or against the Titans, like, you can overcome a slow start and come back and win games. It's not as easy against the teams that you're going to have to play in the playoffs. And this was a playoff type of game. Like, this felt truly like a playoff game. And if you have a playoff game where you have 2 40-yard touchdowns allowed, 40 plus on the first 2 drives, Key drops on 3 separate drives. Keenan Allen drops a perfect 3rd down throw. Oronde Gadsden gets the ball tipped and picked in the red zone on the 2-yard line. Another 3rd down drop by Oronde Gadsden later on. Yeah, you're not going to win those games, especially when your special teams left 4 points off the board with 2 dicker misses, and then also set up 6 points for the Houston Texans with 2 shanked punts by J.K. Scott. Like, it was overall somehow a much better performance than the playoff loss, and I think that's how you can kind of see how far they come, is just like, they had all of those things go wrong, and they still had a good chance to win this game. But at the end of the day, you cost yourself a chance at the AFC West crown. You cost yourself a chance at a home game to open up your playoff run after the 2 losses that Justin Herbert has are both on the road. Because this year you actually had a chance with the Chiefs out of it to get yourself that home playoff game. And these are kind of the things that have cost them in the playoff losses that we've been so frustrated through, right? Like, a lot of those things reared their ugly head in this game. And I think it's good in some ways, and we'll talk about that later with the silver linings that have happened now. But I do want to we do have to talk about Justin Herbert, who was just spectacular. And I mean, watch the Monday morning quarterbacks tomorrow, because Box score watchers are going to tell on themselves this week. If you have anything to say Justin Herbert was a superhuman freak that did everything he could to win this game, we weren't watching the same game. And I mean, you just go through the plays. 60-yard bomb to Quentin Johnston, made an incredible play evading 2 rushers and hitting Oronde Gadsden, and 2 guys on your right side where I've never seen 2 offensive linemen move so quickly right next to each other ever. Neither one of them got a hand on the defender coming in at Justin Herbert. He somehow splits the defenders, finds Oronde Gadsden for a huge conversion, and he can't finish through contact. 3rd and 14. Justin Herbert escapes, scrambles for 28 yards when they needed to set up a touchdown drive. Insane. 3rd and, later on, he has a 3rd and 11 inside his 1-yard line. Presses the line of scrimmage, goes to run, finds Will Dissly for a conversion. Like, there were just so many times in this game where it's like you don't want Justin Herbert to have to play hero mode all the time. But, man, he made a ton of hero mode type of plays in this one, and it was the only reason the Chargers had any chance in it.
Justin Herbert was unbelievable in that football game. Like, he literally put the team on his back. He refused to let the Houston Texans beat him. Like, he did absolutely everything in his power to overcome the offensive line, overcome the issues of them losing so quickly, trying to make plays, trying to keep plays alive, like making unbelievable throws under like certain duress all game long. The Houston Texans had over 20 pressures on him. They had sacked him 5 times, which honestly, if it wasn't Justin Herbert, it would have been at least 10 or more. His ability to escape and extend plays is uncanny. And I think one of the best parts of that 28-yard run was that it included a truck stick of Derek Stingley Jr., okay? Like, that was a part of that run big time because he bounced off of that hit and went for another 10 or 15 yards after that. Just a guy who would not be denied, and I feel 1,000% confident that had that penalty not actually happened and Justin Herbert and that offense got the ball back, I feel confident that they would have walked down that field and scored a touchdown to take the lead and win that game. Just the way he was playing, it felt like he was not going to be denied.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the reason he never got that chance in the next segment. Just, I mean, a brutally soft call in the biggest moment of the game. But I do think, the way the Chargers went down with the big pass to Ladd McConkey, the big pass to Oronde Gadsden on the touchdown drive right before the Texans had that final drive where they ended the game, it did feel like they got into a rhythm. Pass protection-wise, they were keeping him up enough to be able to make some plays down the field, even in obvious passing situations, and they had a chance. It felt like they could have gone and got that touchdown because they would have had plenty of time left had they not had the terrible penalty that was called against him. But I think the other big thing for Justin Herbert was the biggest criticism we had of him in the last game was not just, obviously turning the ball over 4 times, 4 interceptions, but he didn't take it upon himself and run at all in that game. In this game, he's the Chargers' leading rusher, which for better or for worse. But that big-time scramble is exactly what you need from him to go win these big games like this, especially against great defenses. And I think the one part that was kind of apparent in this game just as much, maybe a little less so, but almost just as much as the game you had last year against the Texans in the playoffs, is the rest of the Chargers offense just didn't help him out. I mean, the rest of the team didn't help him out, especially the defense early and the special teams throughout. But like off the bat, the game plan didn't work, right? Way too much run twice and throw on 3rd down, but they actually couldn't protect him on 3rd down. So the first 3 times he drops back, he's sacked twice in it, right? Too many runs up the middle. Omarion Hampton can't get anything going. It was just brutally obvious. They were taking too many just no gains or losses on 1st down. He has 14 carries for 29 yards, 2.1 yards per carry in this game. Omarion Hampton, he was one of the big improvements that you have, right? And then obviously the offensive line, like this per Chris Rim, the Chargers allowed 20 pressures. Justin Herbert, 4th game of his team allowing 20 pressures this year, which is most in the NFL, and also the most since any quarterback since it happened to Justin Herbert in 2022. So the game plan to try to start Bobby Hart at left tackle was a disaster. They ended up benching him, but it's just like it was still an untenable situation. And it feels like if Justin Herbert wasn't in hero mode, they would have got blown out because the rest of the offense didn't pick him up at all.
Yeah, the protection wasn't good enough. They didn't have enough quick answers, in the passing game, schematically from a game planning standpoint, from a play calling standpoint. There wasn't enough answers in that situation. The pass protection wasn't there. The protection plan wasn't good enough. And yeah, they couldn't get anything going on the ground in the running game. I mean, Omar Hampton, 2.1 yards per carry average in that football game. It's just really, really hard. And it was a similar situation that happened last year against the Texans. Couldn't run the ball, although Justin Herbert managed this situation a whole lot better than he was able to in that playoff game. So yeah, the Chargers offense looked a whole lot better, even when there were so many things working against Justin Herbert.
It's crazy all the things that went against him and the performance he was still able to have against that defense, where he really barely put the ball in any trouble at all, because they also had 3 drops. So even when he was making the plays, the balls were getting dropped, including the pick from Oronde Gadsden, who had a really rough game, and you have to live with those rookie moments sometimes when you're relying on rookies. So we're going to talk about his rough day and Quentin Johnston's huge bounce back from his playoff performance last year and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge, but with PrizePicks, it's always good to be right. With high-pressured football matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never slows down, and PrizePicks lets you stay in control. It's the daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player projections. No drafts, no waiting. Just pick more or less and play your way. If you missed out over the weekend, you can still get in on tonight's action by going with someone like Matthew Stafford to throw for more than or less than 269.5 passing yards, and pair that with Bijan Robinson to have more or less than 73.5 rushing yards. You hit those, it's that simple. You win. And what I also love is they have the new early payouts feature, which is a game changer. If a player starts hot, you can cash out before the game even ends. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. We still have more to get into here, David, because the Chargers had some ups and downs, but one of the biggest kind of sore thumbs in this game was the performance of Oronde Gadsden II, who did have a little bit of a redemption arc later on in the game, but obviously it was a couple of big-time drops for him that changed the trajectory of this game, including the one in the red zone where the Chargers just found Quentin Johnston on a 60-yard bomb. They have a chance to really change the tide of the game going into halftime, where they had been losing the entire first half. You're down 14-3. You have a chance to potentially, I mean, if he catches it, it's probably 14-10, right? He probably scores. He's running full speed. I don't think he gets tackled. He at least gets a first down, but it's probably 7 points. Cost him 7 points there. And then another one where, again, we talked about Justin Herbert somehow evading 2 free rushers to get out of the pocket and find Oronde Gadsden for a big gain on third down. He isn't able to, finish through the contact. And that was a big thing for Oronde, right? Like, yes, he has wide receiver skills, but how is he going to fare against the super physical opponents? And I think this was a big-time matchup for him to have, a good test for him. So he did bounce back, David, but obviously the roughest, career day for the Chargers star rookie tight end.
Yeah, it was. And for Oronde, he had such an amazing rookie season where it just felt like we didn't see a lot of these moments because the way he was playing, it seemed like he had been in the NFL for several years. Like you saw that NFL lineage really show up with, how he, really dedicated himself to work hard, show up early, really put in all the extra work in the offseason to be able to come out here with the opportunity and have the type of season that he had. But this is the game where the rookie aspects really showed themselves, unfortunately, with the drops, and they were in huge situations. And, in the one in the red zone, I know, you saw him on the sideline kicking himself, and he was really, really, hard on himself for that. But, unfortunately, those moments are going to happen. But in the NFL, you got to eliminate those. If the ball hits your hands, you got to catch it. I mean, that's the rule, right? I mean, you guys are they're professionals. Like, that situation was absolutely killer. They score that touchdown right there. They get the ball back after, score again. Like, it's a completely different football game, a completely different situation. And not only did that happen in the red zone, but then you had another really big third down drop, and that was absolutely backbreaking. Unfortunately, those mistakes are going to happen. He's still an unbelievable player and still very, very talented. And Justin Herbert made a point to continue to go back to him because that relationship is still something that's forming, and he's still a very, very good football player.
And I think it was a great experience for him to have a game in this atmosphere and to even have some down moments. And I thought it was really good the way that he bounced back, right? Big play up the seam later on. He does get the play action touchdown from the 1 yard line. And I saw, some comments floating around there, and I understand the frustration, but people are like, hey, send a message, bench him the rest of the game. But the problem is like, he is still so clearly your best option.
Yeah,
like,
you can't.
he still is your best chance to win. And I mean, if he makes those 2 catches, you're looking at him, as having a really, really good game.
Oh yeah,
in this one, and I think it was good for him, to take that accountability. And I think it's a big lesson to learn, like where it's in the red zone, like things happen quick. Like you got to get your head around. You got to make tough catches. You got to, even if it's a little hard, like a ball at your face mask has to get caught. Like that. That's it just has to be. So tough moment for him. He took accountability for it. But I do want to talk about Quentin Johnston as well, who gets some redemption, because let's not forget that Quentin Johnston last year in that playoff game, as part of one of the most hilarious box scores I've ever seen, had 0 catches on 5 targets. And it was just a disaster for him because he had his best career game the week before against the Raiders, shows up and really doesn't show up in the playoff match and in the playoff game the next week. And I think now you look at today or Saturday, 5 catches for 98 yards on 8 targets. 9 catches for 202 yards and a touchdown over the last 2 weeks. He's back to being the Chargers wide receiver 1, kind of for better, for worse in some situations, but like they've been rewarded a lot. And I mean, his 60-yard catch in this game was easily the biggest the Chargers had offensively.
Yeah, I mean, for all the times that we've said, and I've said multiple times, that Quentin Johnston is not a deep threat, he's not the guy you should be targeting down the field. Well, he shut my mouth for sure. I mean, he has done it repeatedly all year long, that he's been able to go and make those big plays. And, I think he's earned that. He's earned that here with another big time performance against a defense and a secondary that completely dominated you the last time that you played. I mean, 0 catches on 5 targets is like, that's nightmare fuel. Like for a wide receiver, that just means you're going out there and getting nothing, just getting absolutely stoned every time. And that didn't happen in this game. He was getting open. He made some plays, not only the 60-yard catch, but he showed some physicality on another catch that was getting close to, setting the Chargers up inside the red zone where, that was a big, crucial catch for him. So he's making the catches in the big time moments. He's setting up the Chargers to score points. I think Quentin Johnston in his 3rd year, I think this is a breakout year for him.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to look at it otherwise. I think the steady improvement from year to year. And last week, obviously, he has the one-handed catch in the end zone. He goes up over a defender along the sideline, to make a big catch. But yeah, that play you're talking about where Justin Herbert was wrapped up by a defensive tackle and still somehow stood there for a second and fired it into Quentin Johnston in tight coverage. And Quentin, to his credit, got enough for the first down and made a tough catch and kind of, helped his quarterback going back against the grain a little bit there. But I do think that, I mean, he's making big time plays. He's making the catches he's supposed to make, which has always been the big thing, right? Like, just make the catches you're supposed to make, and you're going to be pretty good, right? The spectacular catches, we've seen a couple here and there, and he showed he does have a little bit in his bag, but like, make the catches you need to make. He's making that, and then some right now a little bit. So I think it's still some frustration for me, though, that you have, Ladd McConkey, who had the game of like one of the best rookie playoff games ever against this team and has no targets in the first half and gets 2 targets for the game, the 131-yard catch. I don't know. Something weird there. Sophomore slump, maybe something we'll talk about later on this week. I think it's kind of a cacophony of things going on with that. But I do want to touch on the Chargers not getting that last chance. Obviously, it was a huge play that changed the game. And, we're never going to sit here and cry about the officiating because the game was lost before that. But it still would have been great to see the Chargers get a final shot to go win this game. But that, honestly, I thought was robbed from them by the refs when, 3rd and 9, 2 minutes and 32 seconds remaining. Chargers sack C.J. Stroud on the Texans' 37-yard line, and it's nullified by an illegal contact on Tarheeb still. Now, I've seen all the screenshots. I've seen all the other fans in my mentions. Look at this. Look at this still shot. You can see the contact. If you're going to call an illegal contact down the field, it can't be initiated, in my opinion, by the receiver, which in this case it absolutely was. So I think if you would have called holding, I still would have thought it was soft because I think he barely impeded him at all, and there was no tug of the jersey or anything like that. He was just kind of around him, but I didn't think he physically slowed him much at all. But it's more about the moment. It's more about having the thought of, oh, hey, I'm going to end the game if I make this call. It better be something that's not up for debate, and I think it's highly debatable that was a penalty in that moment.
It had nothing to do with the outcome of the play. That's what makes me so angry, is that play was over. The Chargers did what they needed to do. They sacked CJ Stroud, and it was not even close. They swarmed him, dominated him. He had no chance to throw it to anybody, so it wouldn't have mattered. Like, that contact is so negligible that you can't do that. You
could call it on any play. You could call that call on any play for that amount of contact. The guys are contacting each other more than 5 yards down the field at all times on every play.
Let these guys play. Like, this is a huge game in the freaking football season. Like, you cannot allow a game of this magnitude to end that way. It's just absolutely taking the entertainment out of the game. Like, you just wasted an opportunity to give the Chargers a chance to go win the game. The bottom line is, it wasn't even involved in the play at all. And I think that's what's the most frustrating part for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the argument against that would just be like, well, okay, well, if he didn't hold him, then he would have thrown it to him. But I think to your point, like, had he thrown the ball right and it stopped him from getting where he needed to get to, CJ Stroud threw it and Tarheeb Still's contact is what stopped Xavier Hutchinson from making the catch. Maybe it's a different story, right? But I think the biggest thing is just like having the presence of mind to know the moment, to know that it's an automatic first down, and basically you're giving them 3 free time downs to run off the clock. I just don't think that's a call you can make in that moment when they let a lot go during that game. So we still have more to get into, because I do think there was a lot of positives from this Chargers defense after just about the worst start we've ever seen from them. So we're going to get into that, the disastrous special teams, and some silver linings that we thought of as well, and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Let's be real, no one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle of hidden fees. Unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month. And Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits save hours every week. And knowing you can reach certified HR experts anytime gives you that peace of mind. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL to get 3 months for free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months free payroll at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. One more time, that's gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. David, let's talk about Jesse Minter and this defense. I mean, back-to-back weeks where they get shredded early, right? I guess that's a pretty troubling trend against, a really good offense in the Cowboys, but it was the way that it happened in this one that was truly disturbing, which is just basically 2 totally busted coverages for 40-plus yard touchdowns. You start with the Texans giving up a 75-yard touchdown to them on a 3rd and 1, which is just brutal. And then on the next drive, you force 1 second down before giving up a 43-yard touchdown on that drive to get yourself into a 14-0 hole. And I think, obviously, it was terrible. They ended up dominating the rest of the game. Like, they dominated 80% of this game, but that was kind of the Jekyll and Hyde of this defense, where it's like, man, they could not afford to put their offense in that hole, but also, like, it showed they had the game plan. Like, they completely neutered and took every edge away from that Houston Texans offense for the entirety of the game, but the 2 mistakes ended up being more than they could overcome.
Yeah, just so uncharacteristic of this football team. The way they play defensively, they just don't do that. They do not allow those type of big plays, and they certainly don't allow it back-to-back. It's just so unbelievably foreign, and I haven't been able to say that about a lot of Chargers defenses, okay? Yeah. There's been some really leaky units out there, but Jesse Minters is not one of them. This is a very well-coached, very disciplined, very intelligent football team on the defensive side, and to see those 2 plays happen was just really head-scratching, very bewildering. But after that, they truly locked in, and they locked down that Houston Texans offense. They couldn't do nothing. They scored 6 points in the remaining 3 and third quarters. Like, they really did nothing else. with the ball in their hands, even when they were gifted beautiful field position, they really didn't do much of anything. The Chargers defense had them guessing and had them frustrated. They had pressure. They stopped the run. They were all over. They were a very swarming and overwhelming defense for the majority of the football game, save for the first about 10 minutes of game time.
I think it was like 6 minutes. In the first 6 minutes, you get like a Chargers offensive 3 and out and 2 big touchdown drives by the Texans in the first 6 minutes, which means the other 54 minutes, the Chargers really dominated them, honestly. Like, that's the most frustrating part of this game, because you look at, okay, yes, they gave up 6 more points. All 6 of those points came after horrendous shanks by J.K. Scott, and we're going to talk about that too.
Terrible.
But, it's hard to hold that against the Chargers defense. Right. And after those first 2 drives, according to Daniel Popper, Texans were 2 of 10 on third downs after those 2 touchdown drives. So 20% conversion rate after those big plays. And then also, getting the spark from Derwin James with that first interception, Elijah Molden having a big time moment there. But yeah, I thought it was just crazy. I mean, the 2 drives they gave up points in the second half were from the Texans starting at the Chargers 47-yard line and their own 45-yard line. So basically 2 first downs and 1 first down away from field goal range.
What are they supposed to do in that situation?
You can't.
It's ridiculous.
Well, and I think per Daniel Popper, that they had allowed the least passes of 20 yards or more for the entire season, this defense did, before giving up 2 40-plus yard ones. And honestly, since the Alohi Gilman trade, they really hadn't had those breakdowns in the back. I mean, you think back earlier to the season, the big Travis Kelce blown coverage. You think back to the Cortland Sutton big-time blown coverage. We did see some of it early in the season, and it seemed like they had gotten away from that and gotten better. But I also, they were who we thought they were. Like, after a bad, start, they looked every bit of an elite defense that can win the Chargers playoff games. They can't have those mistakes early on. And if they don't, we're talking about a team that's probably, allowing 10 or less points in this one. But special teams also just picked the worst day to have a disaster. And this is the tough thing, man. And I'm going to say this on the front end. Cameron Dicker had a bad day, and I'm going to leave it at that for now. Right? Yeah. I'm not going to just, I'm not going to turn around and turn my back on what he's been able to do and not pretend that he hasn't been the most accurate kicker in NFL history. That being said, he was a disaster on Saturday. I mean, he missed the shortest field goal he's ever missed, 32 yards. He misses a PAT where the Chargers never got the ball back, but also just a huge one in a huge moment. Like, that makes it a field goal game, or now you have to score a touchdown, which is what he put them in by missing that last PAT, only the 4th miss of his entire career, which is just brutal. But you lose by 4, Cameron Dicker misses, takes 4 points off the board. He has made so many game-winning kicks where it's hard for me to believe this is just a clutch thing, but he did also have the miss in the Jaguars playoff game, obviously, as well. So this, it isn't a story right now because he's been so good in so many other situations, but man, what a disastrous day he had.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something that you just don't see. I mean, with Dicker out there, to me, I sometimes I don't even look at the screen because it's automatic. It's just one of those things where it's a great snap, it's a good hold, and it kicks going drawn right through the uprights. That's the feeling that he gives you. He gives you that confidence that it's going to be automatic. And unfortunately, it wasn't in this football game. He had 2 really, really bad misses, and they weren't particularly close, and they just weren't really the Cameron Dicker style of kicking. And so I'm not going to make any more of it than it was either. It was one bad performance until it turns into something else. Then we can't make it more than what it was.
Agree with that wholeheartedly. I think it's just when you have a mental position like that, as much as kicker it is, I think it's just how quickly can you shake it off, right? Because I think, with kickers, we've seen it where you can start to unravel once you miss a couple. So for him, I think it'll be about getting back on the horse. And then obviously J.K. Scott, where it's just at one point I just said, J.K. Scott, I beg you. Of all the games to not have a clunker, please let it be this one, because in the second half, that led to the only 2 scoring drives of the second half for the Texans, J.K. Scott had a 22-yard punt that gave the ball to the Texans in Chargers territory.
I can kick it further than that.
And then a 34-yard punt, it is just shanks, just out of bounds shanks. It was just crazy to see him do it twice in a row. Talking about mental, it's hard for me to think the first shank didn't affect the second shank.
Yeah.
But the Texans, to score points, only had to go 24 yards and 29 yards to get points on those drives. in a game like this where your offense is overmatched, your defense is cooking. You can't have it. Like J.K. Scott, like you don't get the same benefit of the doubt to me. Yes, you're a great holder. You bailed the Chargers out. You have great hang time. You've had good games, but like in that moment, man, like you're not, irreplaceable. I'll say, I'm not saying they we'll talk about that more in the offseason, but like you're not irreplaceable, and like you cannot have those performances in the big games like this one. But to me, that is one of the biggest silver linings to this game, David, is like the Chargers got to basically play a playoff game, in my opinion, right? Without having to play with the playoff results and implications that come along with it. Because this felt very much like a playoff game, and the Chargers did exactly the things that they couldn't do and that have cost them playoff wins in the past. And as much as this game sucks, and there were so many ways they could have avoided it, and they absolutely should have won this game, like I do think that is the silver lining. You have young guys who just really got to play in a playoff atmosphere for the first time with the AFC West on the line, and they lost it, but it's hard for me to think that those lessons, those bad moments for rookies, the mistakes that were made can't help you moving forward.
I've always said it, and I'm a firm believer that the most growth, the most learning comes from the biggest failures. And when you make the biggest mistakes, that's when you're able to really find those answers to these questions that obviously you didn't have the answers to in the first place. And so this is really for the Chargers to learn from these mistakes and to improve upon them and make sure they don't happen when the games do matter and the game is won and done in the playoffs. I also feel like I feel good because these are all things that don't happen. They're very uncharacteristic. It's not like these were things that have reared their ugly head game after game after game. These things don't happen to the Chargers. So I can say, okay, well, that was an anomaly. The Chargers special teams unit from the kicking standpoint is not going to be that bad. The Chargers defense is not going to give up those big explosive pass plays. The offense is going to be able to have better answers, and they're going to be able to make those catches that they normally make. All of these things are things that don't normally happen. So I feel confident that the Chargers can make these corrections and go out there and play winning football because we've seen it.
Well, and like you think back to last year, right? Like the Chargers got so fat against just layup team after layup team, right? And even the last few weeks of the season, you get like the terrible Patriots and the terrible Raiders to end your year. And like, you just don't even get a taste of what you're actually going to go up against in the playoffs. Then you actually go up and face a good Texans team last year, and they smack you in the face, right? And you're out of it before you were ever in it. And I think that to have this playoff-like experience for these rookies, I just think is invaluable. And I think the other part of it is, it's like, if you draw the Texans again in the playoffs, it doesn't feel like a death sentence, right? It really doesn't. Like, and also you combine that with the fact that maybe the Chargers just rest their starters in week 18. And now you don't get a bye week, but you have a full extra week of rest for guys that you desperately need back, like Jamari Sawyer and others, where like you don't have to play those guys now. So I think there are a lot of, silver linings in this game. It does feel different than a game where they get up big and they blow it late, right? That wasn't what this game was. Like, this was the Chargers getting off to a terrible start and not being able to quite claw their way all the way back. Feels much different than a game where you're up 14 and then you blow it in the fourth quarter. Like, they can go back and look at this game and say, hey, if we hadn't have started terrible, we dominated the other 90% of this game. So didn't feel the same as some of the charging of years past, even though there was a fair amount of individual charging type of plays. But I do think there are some silver linings to this one. It's not all that bad, but the Chargers obviously cost themselves a chance at the AFC West. That part sucks. But it gives them some flexibility and some options, and I think maybe even some confidence that even when they go up against these best teams, they're on the same level. It's not like last year when you get blown out by the Buccaneers, or earlier this year where you're blown out by the Colts or blown out by the Jaguars. It was a different team that showed up Sunday, and I'm confident in that. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. The good news is we're about to do Buy or Sell Tuesday, getting into the biggest Charger storylines and overreaction. So if you guys want to get in on that, hit us up at all of our social media, at Locked On LSC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, where we post the show to every day as well. You can also call into the voicemail line if you want to get your voice on the show at 323-524-7924. Give us your 30-second Chargers buy or sell or question, and we will get it on the show. But to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. I know it feels bad. But I think there's a lot to be positive about this team right now, and I'm still like not convinced that it's a guarantee that they can't win a playoff game, which I think is a huge progress for this team. But we're back with you guys tomorrow with Buy or Sell Tuesday, getting the biggest Charger storylines and overreactions. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.